In the battle of ideas in economics, in macro theory, we need to ask the question, what then causes crashes? Okay? Because we have these two major competing ideas about how systems of economics should be run or not run. But you have to then answer the question, what then causes market crashes? Now, the roles here are totally reversed because, as before, the Keynesians had all these kind of figures and facts and theories, and the Austrians really said just let it be. In this case, the Keynesians only have very simple answers. They have one answer, in fact. The reason we have market crashes is because we didn't have enough Keynesianism. That's their answer, okay? If markets fail, it's when central planners don't do enough. So if anything goes wrong, you just didn't exercise enough authority. And their answer to any problem is give them more power. Okay? Anytime there's a problem in Keynesian economics, it's just you didn't do enough. You just need to do more. So if there's a problem and a Keynesian is in charge of the Fed or in the government, their solution is print more money. Make it happen. The reason you have bad outcomes is because you just didn't do enough. So that's an interesting theory. Every time there's a problem, give me more power. Now you see the other reason why politicians really like this outcome here, because most of the world has seen this happen. It leads to dictatorships, and no matter what happens, they simply exercise more power and print more money. Okay? Venezuela, Zimbabwe, North Korea, the list can go on. If you go over here to the Austrians, theirs is a bit more complicated and nuanced. Okay? So what they would do is use the tree analogy. These are trees. I know my art is terrible, but you need to just go with it. These trees here are what the Austrians think, because remember, they think the economic system is organic. Humans are part of nature, and so the systems they invent will be natural and organic in their structure. And so they say, look, a tree over time grows and produces fruit. And as time goes by, it gets bigger, it gets stronger, and it produces more fruit. And so we've got our little fruits hanging off of our limbs here, and it grows that way over time. What they argue is that what Keynesians do is juice the economy in the short term. So our farmer came to our tree and we injected it with different types of hormones that are going to make the tree's limbs grow really fast. Now, if they do that, they get really long and they produce way more fruit than they normally would. So they say in an organic system you can, in the short term, juice the economy or juice the tree, basically give it tree steroids and make it produce lots and lots of fruit. The problem with this is that these limbs have not developed over time. They've just developed, quickly based upon the injections of money into the system. And so what you have to do with these very weak limbs is you have to prop them up. You have to put a board in there, right? In order to prop up the limbs. You've probably seen them around the cherry orchards. The farmer wants to get more and more fruit, and so those tree limbs are sticking way out there, and if they get too much fruit on them, they'll break. So you prop them up by putting boards underneath them. And the Austrians would argue that this is not natural, that the reason you're getting so much fruit is because you're injecting the economy with extra money that really is not productive. It's just producing things because people are trying to take advantage of that excess money. And in order to keep that system going, you have to prop it up. For example, we've had to prop up the banking system many times in the last 30 years. There was the flash crash of 87, there was the savings and loan bailout of 93, there was the contagion bailout of 97, there was the dot-com bust in 2001 where everyone got mailed checks in the mail, $400 for every citizen. Same kind of bailouts, only bigger in 2008 and 9, where even more checks got mailed out. I think it was $800 per person. Here we are with COVID. Now everyone got $1,200 per person. So what the Austrians would argue is that your props, your bailouts, will have to become bigger and bigger and bigger as this economy unnaturally grows in ways that it probably wouldn't normally do that. That's not a natural system. So their argument is there's Keynesians interfering with things and causing it to look good in the short term. But what happens is that when the winds come, a big problem happens. 9/11 bombings in America causes a crash, or you have COVID-19 sweeping the country and shuts everything down. These props simply can't stand up to that, and they fall off. The orchardists have it happen. There's a big windstorm and it knocks the boards out from under the trees, and then the limbs break off and all their fruit is rotting on the ground, and now our economy looks awful and pathetic. All right? So this is what the Austrians would argue is what's going on and what causes crashes. They would say that the bust in the market, this bust down here, was not caused by, bad market management. It was caused because we had market management at all. And so the tree would have grown naturally and been able to withstand the windstorm, but it wouldn't have produced as much fruit along the way. It would slowly grow to accommodate. The problem, they say, is the boom right here leads to the bust right there. All right? So it is the artificial boom before it that causes the bust afterwards. So for their argument, they would say, for example, the Roaring Twenties. In your history books, everyone just calls it the Roaring Twenties, and no one actually says why it was roaring. Your history books and your history teachers, I just say this is what happened, but they don't very often explain it. Well, you got to remember the Federal Reserve was created in 1913 and started printing extra money into the economy and got it roaring in the 20s, and everyone put their money into the stock market because that extra money had to go somewhere, and even the bankers joined in and took out loans to put more in, and that stock market climbed a great wall and then collapsed. See, all that 20s production turned into that awfulness of the 30s. All right? And so that's their lesson. They say the problem is not the bust, the problem is the boom that then creates the bust. So, if you were to diagnose what's going on today, we are at an all-time high in the stock market. If you're an Austrian, you would say, here it comes. Going back to reality is going to look like this. People think this is reality. This is a false reality. This is what should be happening, but this is work and save and not, live the high life. This is fun. So they want to return to this, and they think, oh my gosh, now I got this. And so it's not a little change, it's a huge change. And it's very, very painful. So the Keynesian would then say, hey, our money managers just aren't managing things right. We need to give them more power and let them do even more. That will solve the problem. Okay? So that's their solution, and the Austrians' solution right there. Don't juice the market artificially, because in the long run, you're going to cause a bust. And the Austrians these days, a lot of the money managers around the world and hedge fund people are complaining. They're saying, look, our booms and our busts are getting closer and closer together, so that we have to create ever bigger bubbles before they burst, and then create more and more and more, almost like a top spinning out of control. And yeah, that's what we've got. So which way are we going to go? One world government, central planners control all, manage your resources so that everyone has an online Fed coin or international monetary coin that's on your phone, and you don't have money, you just push the buttons, and then the planners see everything you do. You have no privacy, and then they tweak and manage everything. Like if you're saving money and they want you to spend it, they just give you a negative interest rate, and then you're like losing money unless you go out and spend it. Would you like that kind of control, that type of power? Remember, give them more power. I can see that's where this is going. Or do you want an organic structure where there is no centrally planned anything? You have a standard and you just let it go. So these are the two competing ideas. It's called the battle of the century.